then, exhaust systems. Now I've just taken delivery of this box which contains manifolds for a Mondeo Duratec V6. Now if you're at all in the know, you will know that this engine, the AJ6 3 litre from Jaguar S-Type, sorry, is actually the same engine because it dates from an era when Ford owned Jaguar. So here we have one of the two exhaust manifolds, and the first thing, because of course I'm only 90% certain about this, some time ago I did actually buy these two exhaust flanges for the Jaguar S-Type engine, so check that they really are the same is the first thing. And I think it's a lot easier to do with on the bench than on the car, but I think you can see that they are the same. So that's the first thing, but of course the real test will be to get that fitting somewhere in that dark hole. Now luckily stainless steel though it is, this was pretty cheap, 90 quid, and to be honest it might be worth it just for the bends. So it seems to have got a maker's name on it, Toyo Sport. I don't know if that is important. Of course the Mondeo V6 is mounted transversely, so although the flange mates up to the engine, it's pretty unlikely that anything else is going to just fit. Now one of the questions which I sort of slightly agonised about is which side of the engine is this from, and I've established that the front of the engine has the mounting stud at the top. So this is a left-hand manifold, and it goes on this side of the engine. But of course this pipe goes the wrong way, so it will have to be swiveled approximately 180 degrees. Now that should be fairly easy to do. What else? What about the other one? Now this one is, well, it's from the other side of the engine. So again, get your legs untangled, there we go. The front stud, if you like, on each side. Are you looking? Come over here. The front stud is upwards compared to the tubing. So this is a left-hand manifold, and this is a right-hand manifold. The problem gets worse. This is the wrong way round, as I've mentioned. This one has a starter motor down here. So in actual fact it cannot be used in its present form. Somehow I need to move the downpipe to the front of the engine where there's actually an empty space. So lots of jiggery pokery will be required. And this pipe that came with it, which actually joins the two together, is obviously designed for a transverse installation, so is probably entirely useless. So I could, I suppose, just offer this one up to the, no, this one I could offer up to the engine. Right, I'm just going to cut it where it becomes straight, which is approximately here. Right, if there ever was any warranty on this, it's certainly gone now. Is the chances of this fitting in here low, or are they in fact zero? Right then, we have an exhaust manifold. There it is. and it even comes out underneath in quite a good place. However, bad news is it's actually touching the chassis just down there. So, and the engine isn't quite in position either. But I would still, considering that's a bog standard manifold, say that that is pretty close to being a good thing. Work out how my engine mounting, and perhaps more importantly the oil filter takeoff that I've got, which was modified, these are touching, so they're too long, so something else is going to have to happen there too. So underneath the car you can see the downpipe coming down, and it's not hard to work out where the exhaust is going to go. You can also see where the area of a problem is, just here. And I think the answer to that, now this is like that shape because this is a rectangular box section, and this is also a rectangular box section but facing the other way. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to notch the box section to make it line up basically with this, because it's, well, you can't see from here, but it's stepped back on the other side as well, so this kind of sticks out. I don't think it's having much structural effect. So I think I'm going to be able to use this manifold virtually unchanged. Of course I've cut the end off because it was facing, I don't know which way was it facing, that way or something completely wrong anyway, but simple matter to join a new end on that. I'm going to have to look again at the engine mounting though. You can see the chassis part of it just here, but of more, I'll get you upside down now, of more significance is this. Now this is a feature of the S-type installation. Basically I think this engine was designed only with transverse installations in mind. So this goes on to where the oil filter, and originally it had a great big piece sticking out over here to an oil filter, which of course was massively in the way, and I've already had it altered, as you can see, to take these banjo type connections in there. But I did think actually when I was having it done it may be a bit of a problem having them sticking out, and it is. So we're going to have to look again at that. Right, it's very nearly off. Okay, so I've removed the downpipes from the plate, and of course it was like that. Now I'm wondering if I can make it like that. Which looks like it might not be quite as easy as I hoped. Right, for my next cut, so I want this arm to go over there. And that's quite hard to work out which direction to make the cut, but I'm going to go with 90 degrees to the flat plane. So this is the right hand manifold, and I've cut it off the flange plate, and then tacked it very slightly. So these two that used to be here are now here, and something like this can happen. So I'll put a bit more of an angle on the flange plates, and it is very close actually. Probably take a bit more of an angle, feeling it by hand. It's very close to actually going on the cylinder head. So this manifold is kind of getting there. I've actually managed to get only one mounting bolt inserted. So it's getting close, and one of the things I've noticed was I'm moving the bottom end of the downpipe towards the engine block. So the arrangement I've got at the moment means that the exhaust manifold, this section, is too far this way because it bangs into the engine mounting. Now that's fine, I could remake the engine mounting, but on the other hand this is not exactly finished, is it? Okay, so what I'll do is I'll disconnect this branch and I will extend this piece and I'll move the whole thing forward by an inch or so and then reconnect it again. Right, that's better. I used a bit of masking tape. Put it on upside down actually, so sticky side out, so it doesn't stick to the pipe. Wrapped it round and then put another piece on the outside so it's not sticky. Now I've drawn around the end of it. Now I should just tack that together. Right, so I've got my beginnings of a manifold, and you can see this branch here, because it's now further away from the flange, it's heading off that way more than it should do because it's on a V shape. At least the cut flange or cut edge is pretty much in the same plane as the flange there. Right, so it's kind of getting there. So what do we have now? You've probably got a better sight of it than I have. I've got 2 bolts in, temporary wing nut things. Obviously I only got 1 branch connected, but it is kind of almost there. So if I'm going to move this that way by about an inch, obviously it's going to be easier to do it up here somewhere than something down here, because the amount of movement is kind of amplified by the length. So if I think I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it here. I'm going to do a partial cut through this is my extension piece that I did earlier on. Well now, it certainly has moved back a long way. But this pipe here is still in the way. Now, this is going to have to be moved anyway. So I'm going to cut this one now. It was always going to have to be cut, but it's now going to be cut. So this branch here needs to come forward quite savagely, quite quickly. So I think what I'm going to do here, I'm going to do that partial pie cut thing I didn't manage to do last time. I'm going to do it on this pot, which is making it go that way slightly. I'm going to make it go that way slightly, but as well as that, I'm obviously also going to have to extend it up to here. So I've now cut off the branch that was fouling on the steering shaft, and so I'm left with these 3 bends. Two parts for the one at the back of the engine, and one that was previously pointing towards the front of the engine. Now, to be honest, I'll start getting mixed up which is which, and it doesn't really matter that much because none of them can be used as is. So what I've also been doing is on this one I've actually done a bit of reshaping with the selection of tools and the vice and adjustable spanner and that type of thing. So it now goes on there pretty closely. So I'm going to tack that in position, and then I'm going to have to tackle this, which is the worst. The worst problem is, which as far as the steering shaft, is this one. So here's the arrangement at the moment, and bear in mind that this pipe here isn't actually connected down there, but I think that's not that important to the understanding. Possibly it could be made to lean in further towards the engine, so making this go in slightly. But it is very much looking like the third pipe, which needs to come up and over here, is going to have extreme difficulty getting past the steering shaft. Now, that sounds like a Spitfire to me. I wonder if it really is. You might see that in the distance, me. Pretty certain that was a Spitfire. We get a lot of those, to be honest. Anyway, where was I? Yep, and that's Jessica. Right, back to the job in hand. You might be able to see these sharp bits of metal sticking out, and that is because an early version of this steering shaft actually had an intermediate bearing down here. At the moment it's nowhere near connected. If I do anywhere near connect it, it goes right over here. Problem. So I think then when all's said and done, I'm going to have to go back to having a shaft with an intermediate bearing. So I have this selection of parts from my steering shaft that I used many months ago, over a year ago in fact, I think, and this is the one I've been using recently, but I did have it set up with an intermediate bearing previously, and it was this this bearing that I was going to use, but I thought at the time perhaps I'll just see if I can manage without. So yes, my simplified version was to have a straight shaft, and I was hoping I could use that, but I shall just go back to the previous version. So back to the manifold itself. I have bolts. I have a spare flange. In fact, I have two of them. So I've bolted another flange to the main flange. It's interesting that the main flange from this stainless steel exhaust is actually thicker than the off-the-shelf one I bought some time ago. But anyway, hopefully that will prevent warpage from happening. I've already welded up some of the gaps in the join between the headers here and that flange. I need to do some more under here, but I need to get past the bolts that I've put in to hold it together, so that will have to wait till later. So this is the two manifolds, which is this one, which is the pretty much standard Ford Mondeo, and this one which I've just made, if you like. And what I've noticed is I seem to have created two left-hand manifolds. This is the left-hand side of the engine. This is the right. The only difference being the flange is on the other way up. So if it was ever possible to get hold of a second, just this part and a spare flange, I guess you could cut off the flange, flip it over, and you'd have that pretty much. So here's the exhaust in situ. It fits down the front of the engine mounting, which I haven't changed, and goes down the front in this space here. It's clear that I'm going to have to use a steering shaft with a centre joint in it. Well, that is what it had before, so I'm fairly confident that's going to be okay. I've put the piece of the steering shaft actually in position. This is the one that I've been using recently, and this is a piece of a previous version. So you can see that the universal joint needs to go in approximately, well, somewhere along here. Sorry about the smeary lens at the end of that segment, but there we have it. Effectively, this exhaust manifold is done. I do need to see about the steering shaft, although that's just reinventing something I actually had previously. I do need to see about the steering shaft, and there's a small modification on the other side, and the major part of that actually is I need to remake the engine mounting, so the oil filter thing on the left hand side of the S-type engine doesn't protrude so far as it does at the moment, but I've got a really quite neat idea for that, which I need to speak to my local friendly machine shop. But as far as the exhaust manifold itself is concerned, I think we can declare this sub-project done, for now at least.